Okay. Yeah, it's tough. It's obviously when you miss the potential game winner 2 games in a row, that looks a certain way, right? And the primacy effect and the leverage of those situations, people are going to, especially because he started the season so poorly, people are going to say what they're going to say, and they're going to take from that what they want. Now, the final look against Golden State, I know that some people were unhappy about it. I know that, we've dealt with this since early in the DeRozan Casey era of, those end of game plays being a one-on-one for a long two or wherever you can clear space for jumper. This franchise clearly values, hey, can we get a shot off? And that's always going to be trusting your guys. And that also wasn't the first option in that case. Draymond beautifully sniffed out what the Raptors were going for there, and Pascal was kind of option B or option C, and then the Warriors were pinching in at the elbows so he couldn't drive. So tough one there. I didn't think it was the cleanest look. Surprisingly, Wiggins defended it well. Wiggins is apparently a good defender now. And then tonight, there was some contact, and there was probably, honestly, I as we're doing this, the Raptors media availability is going on, so I haven't got to ask this yet, but I wonder if maybe Siakam expected Covington to use the foul the Blazers had to give, so he didn't go into his move right away because he was expecting with 4 or 5 seconds left on the clock to get the intentional foul. It wasn't a terrible look. He had been, his post game was awesome for most of the game. But yeah, man, they rim out and like, it's funny. Like, obviously that's basketball. Sometimes they rim out, sometimes they rim in. You look back 2018 and those 17 tip-ins that the Raptors missed in game 1 against the Cavs, and then you look at 2019 and Kawhi's 4 bouncer finds its way in. Like sometimes these things happen. It is tough though, because they're 2-8 and they need a lot more of those to start tilting the other way. Yeah, you're thinking of that mellow one in the corner against the Boucher closeout, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's not universally true. Like, obviously, that Kings game, the Kings almost set a franchise record for points in the first quarter against the Raptors. So sometimes it just goes that way. I think in this case, 4th game in 6 nights on a West Coast trip, and especially because they've been running such a tight rotation, that could have been a fatigue thing by the end. But I don't even think, like, even if you could chalk it up to fatigue, Siakam playing, I think, 77 minutes over the 2 games or whatever, that doesn't make it feel any better for them because They're probably going to keep running a thin-ish rotation the next little bit. And B, every team plays those fatigue games, and it's not you can't. Had they been rolled start to finish, it'd be one thing, but they were up 17 in this game, and this is now the 6th time that they've blown a double-digit lead. So that 2-8 record, had you taken care of business and locked all those down, it's overly reductive to be like, well, they could be 8-2, but they led 6 of those losses by double digits. So, that's where, and I wrote this after the Golden State game because I thought they did a tremendous job on Curry. And even though Steph is Steph and uses his gravity so well, even when his shot's not there, there's a breaking point or a limit to these kind of, I don't like the term moral victories for them, but like these games where you're progressing in the right direction and the process is sharp and you can see the improvements. That those are great if you have a 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season. Sequencing matters though, and you're 2-8 here, and the longer that drags on, I think the more psychological toll it could possibly have. And I think because now you could look at this as, hey, they turned it around in the last 3 games. They've played much, much better, but there could also be, that shaken confidence of, okay, well, it didn't matter. We still went 1-2 and dropped both of those games. So I don't think they're there yet. I think they have the leadership with Lowry and Van Vliet to kind of weather that a little bit longer. But, if they're now going to be at home for 5 games. And if they don't go, 3-2, 4-1 on that homestand, and you head back out on the road and you're still, 6-7 games under 500, I don't know, man. There's certainly a tipping point at which, this becomes a team that is no longer trying to get back to who they were. They're trying to find out an entirely new identity on the fly, and that's
and maybe sometimes it's natural to overreact after losses like these. Because
especially on back-to-back nights.
Yeah.
None of us like staying up till 1 a.m. to watch a buzzer beater rim out, right?
Yeah, and there's a comment. By the way, we had an audio problem to start, so I'm glad we're doing a test run. I think it's fixed now.
You also were supposed to crop out my bed in the background when you framed us here, and it's people don't need to know what my sheets look like.
Well, that's where the action happens. I mean, I don't know. Okay, so Jonathan Guer asks a Len question. Basically, I feel like Horford would fit better than Len and Baines. Well, anybody would fit better than Len and Baines right now. But that Len stint that we saw, I think it was the second quarter. Was it the second where he came in for Boucher?
Yeah, late, because Boucher had played just a ton of minutes in a row.
Yeah, to give him a rest. And we saw a significant drop-off in both the production on the floor, but also the style of play. The style of play, we weren't able to contest anymore. The Blazers attacked him. He couldn't get rebounds where he had position on the glass. Really, we got nothing for him. And you can argue that this is maybe not a game for him, but this is totally a game for him.
Yeah, this is the game you need him for, at least the first half when Nurkic was still healthy and able to play. I thought even though Len got the starting nod, like I think right out of the gate, the confidence didn't look like it was there. Where like OG spent a little bit of time on Nurkic so that they could switch those actions on the perimeter and just keep Len closer to the rim, where he is a pretty good rim protector and you want him there for rebounding. But he came away from this game with 1 block in 10 minutes and 0 rebounds. And, I do think that the second quarter stint stood out because they had just played so well with Boucher. Now, the opening stint was really strong. Len only finished, they were -1 in his 10 minutes. So that's not a crazy negative or anything like that. But I think what's clear right now is when Leonard Baines start, they can't play the way that they want to play and they want their identity to be defensively. And B, it's hard if Boucher doesn't start to find enough minutes of him with the starters. Now, Boucher starting would cause a bunch of other complications, like you have Len and Baines off the bench, and one of them basically has to play then. You don't have Boucher being that kind of pick and roll threat with Kyle Lowry in those second units. There are some issues with that, but you saw the issue tonight with Boucher coming off the bench if you're going to play him 32 minutes a game, and that he played like in the first half, he played like a 14-minute straight stretch. This is the old Patrick Patterson problem where he'd come off the bench and then you'd try to play him 18 minutes straight to close the game. And by the end of the fourth, there were no legs in the jumper. So they've got some things to figure out there. I think it's very obvious that Boucher is their best center. And I think the way Len and Baines have played so far, you've got to tilt it to play to your advantages. Like you can't match up. Like you're certainly not worrying about what Biyombo can do to Boucher in the post these next couple games, especially because like you're not rebounding well even with your centers out there. So what do if you can stay more to your identity, it gets tough because they just don't have enough players that they trust to be good right now. So like the more you play small, the more you need an extra wing or an extra guard to be playing well. And right now, Powell and Davis aren't that, and Flynn and Thomas aren't getting the opportunity to be that.
But there's a couple things I want to touch on, and one we saw.
Yeah, sorry, my answers are very long. That's one thing we can clean up for next one.
Yeah, and also I just fixed the points weren't being shown on the box score, so that's
it's a little too narrow.
Well, I also shifted it around, so your bed is more hidden now, a little bit. So that's a bonus there.
Perfect.
Two
I'm moving soon, so I'll have a new setup that looks a little more professional and not.
Oh, you're moving.
Yeah, and for March 1st, so I won't have like a stack of masks over one shoulder and a bed over the other shoulder.
I'm not going to give away where Blake lives, but I absolutely love the area he lives in right now.
Yeah, it's just time.
Yeah.
I've been here like almost 4 years now.
So. Two points I want to touch on. One is that I think in this game we saw more than at any point in the season, in the short season, the Raptors make really a conscious decision to run their offense through Pascal Siakam from the block. It wasn't just at the point of attack where he looked to drive and kick. It was a concerted effort. Maybe in previous games they've tried it and they've abandoned it quickly, but here they stuck with it. And whenever they gave the ball to Siakam on the block against Covington or even smaller guys, they got good results. Siakam's court vision was excellent. So that gave me some hope that this may be something that we can generate more efficient offense going forward.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing to take away from this game, and then also last game where he had 12 assists or 11 assists, this looks like a more functional Siakam-centric offense than here's the ball and you attack one-on-one, right? Like I'm not saying you want Siakam to try to score on post-ups 10 times a game, but I think him at the elbow or him on the block is a natural playmaking position for him. I think he's very comfortable reading the timing of double teams and knowing, if I spin this way, this is where the help's coming from. If I spin that way, that's where the help's coming from. Guys are starting to cut well around him, whether it's OG and Boucher on the baseline. Stanley had that nice 45 cut tonight. So they're getting there from a process perspective. And I think anytime a guy is flirting with his career high in assists every single night for an entire week, or he becomes, the first non-Lowry player since Jose Calderon to get a triple-double for the Raptors, those are good process things. And, Siakam has some stuff to figure out still in terms of, how do you get to the line a little bit more? How do you mix in the right volume of threes? How do you stay out of foul trouble, really, these last couple weeks? But the playmaking looks so good these last 3 or 4 games. And I think, if there's one thing you're taking from this tough road trip, and I know that there are some people who just don't have the appetite to take positives from a 1-3 trip on a 2-8 team. But Siakam's playmaking and comfort level is at the top of the list, and it's not even close.
Yeah, it's extremely positive play. I mean, again, I started off this thing by saying like how unfortunate it is. Blake, you got to go? I know you got a media availability. Okay.
No, Eric's covering it tonight.
Okay. So, Siakam, I agree. I just feel like bad for the guy. A couple of comments, 2 or 3 comments here about fade for Cade, and can we put this one to bed? I mean, I don't think the Raptors are bad enough to compete for that. Just quickly, man, like your thoughts on this entire idea of tanking, just go.
I'm generally anti-tanking unless you're already pretty bad. Like if you're the Detroit Pistons this year, yes, you should not be focusing on winning games because it has absolutely no impact on your short or long-term capability to win games right now. If you're the Raptors, there's a little bit more of, we've made the playoffs X number of years in a row. Siakam struggled in the playoffs last year as a lead guy. It would be helpful to get him another playoff series or 2 of experience in that role. The greatest player in franchise history is in the last year of his contract. Do we really want to waste, what might be his last season with the team? And this is where, when I said earlier that sequencing matters, this is where it becomes tougher, right? Like had they started the season 10-4 and then hit a 2-8 skid, you're not really thinking about that. Probably you're just thinking about riding the ship. If they come out of this homestand and they're 4-11 and things still aren't trending in the right direction, they've blown another couple games, it is probably going to be a seller's market at the deadline. It's tough to find a home for Lowry at $30.5 million that, first of all, I think if you looked into trading him, he would have to be okay with it. You have to have him on board. But you also have to make the money match, and that's tough to do without taking back bad salary. And then you have to get the assets to make it worthwhile, right? Like you're not trading Kyle Lowry for salary filler at a second. You better be getting some stuff. So the fade for Cade stuff, I do think that it being such a spicy draft this year, and it is a really fun draft, and the NBA flattened the lottery odds, so you don't have to tank all the way to the bottom to have a real shot at a Cade or a Mobley or any of these other guys at the top. I think right now it's maybe something fun to keep in the back of your head and be like, oh, worst case scenario, maybe you get a shot, but that is not 10 games into a 72 game season. That's not on the radar yet. You can just look at the standings and see some of the teams that are not lottery teams right now and correct that real quick. I don't know that the Knicks and the Cavs and the even the Hornets are, that's what you can do this time of year, right? Like for all the good teams performing poorly, look at the bad teams performing well. It's like, oh yeah, it is pretty early. Right. Not early in terms of you're not worried about a 2-8 start, but lottery wise, you're not thinking that way yet. By the way, the stats from after the game just updated. So the Raptors are 2-8, which is obviously a very bad record, and it is tied for the worst record in basketball. Oh. Where do you think they rank in the league in net rating right now?
I think fairly high, because they're like one of the best defensive teams, I think. Because I looked this up yesterday, so I'm guessing top 5.
No, in net rating.
Oh, net.
Net rating is like plus minus per 100 possessions.
I don't know. Still, top 10.
No, they're 19th, but it's for the 30th team in record to be 19th in net rating. That's a lot of in baseball. We always talk about the Pythagorean win-loss expectation. So like your point differential, you can project your win-loss with that. And the Raptors right now are basically playing like a 4-6 or 5-5 team, and they're 2-8. It's not great.
And the stat, I had to like double check. They were the top defensive team in the league based on some statistic, which I was like,
I don't know about that one.
I don't know. Delete. We can't delete this. It's a live stream.
Yeah, it's no, I don't know. They might have been at the top if you don't control for pace or something like that. But
I'll check it.
They're not a great defense so far overall.
So I think the general theme really seems to be that the Raptors are just unlucky in these last few games, and the quality of play has been well. Now, assuming that. Sorry,
I just want to push back on that just a little bit. Like I do think there's certainly an unlucky element to it, definitely. Like the sequencing, or you run into hot teams or whatever, especially those New Orleans games. But also there's an element of they didn't pull out these winnable games.
I'm getting there. there. I swear to God, I'm getting there. I swear to God.
So it is a little unlucky, but you control that a little bit yourself too. Okay.
So for sure they've been a little unlucky, but if you had to point out why they are losing games, it's not really that hard to do on a night-by-night basis.
Right.
And at some point, Masai Ujiri, as he looks to figure out what to do at the deadline, assuming he wants to build on what's there and not blow it up, he has to address the center position, because what's there right now is not really tenable. Do you agree with that? That's our weakest spot, and that Baines and Len, like it's kind of unrealistic to expect them to go and find the next level and become like productive members, or do you still have faith in that rotation?
I mean, I don't think the rotation is going to be a strong point. I don't think it's going to be this bad. Like I think what was tough, and I said this on Twitter tonight, is that when they replaced Ibaka and Gasol with Baines and Len, those are obvious downgrades. But if you're looking, over 72 games and 48 minutes, Baines is, or was last we saw him at least, he hasn't looked like that now, but a really good backup center. Like if he's your backup, you're in good shape. Len is your third center, you're in good shape. But what's happened is both of those guys had to elevate up a role, right? So Baines is a really good backup, but that doesn't make you a good starter necessarily. Or Len is a really good third string / matchup guy, and then suddenly when you're relying on him every night, even as a starter, he's a little overexposed. So I think your faith in the starting or the center rotation depends a lot on whether you're comfortable with Boucher starting at the 5 eventually. And I think if you start Boucher at the 5, you have to kind of commit to living with some of those bad matchups. Like, yeah, you probably change the starting lineup against the 76ers and Embiid, but, maybe you're not changing it for just a standard run-of-the-mill big center. So I think that determines a lot of it. Now, I don't think the trade market's going to really open up for a while still. Like a lot of these guys, like Len and Baines couldn't even be traded until February because they signed this offseason. Some other guys like Van Vliet can't be traded until March. So your hands are a little tied anyway addressing this stuff. And then more toward what is this team? If they turn this around and suddenly they're a couple games over 500 and they head into that March break, that March break's March 5th to 10th, and then the deadline's March 25th, I think. If they head into that and they have positive momentum and their record's back on the right side, absolutely, you try to address it. But if things are still looking like this team's going to top out as a first-round playoff exit, are you giving up assets to, go out in the first round a little closer? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if someone comes along and, Biz gets bought out or Dwayne Dedmon is just killing the G League or something like that, like you look at it, but, I don't think you're giving up assets for a modest upgrade. And I don't know that, I guess the dream scenario is the Pacers fall off and Miles Turner becomes available, or John Collins keeps complaining about his touches and he becomes available. But I don't know if either of those are realistic. I guess what I'm saying is I don't see the point in giving up long-term assets for a 1-year stopgap in a year when you're not going to be a contender anyway.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And that's a sobering point. I mean, maybe this team is the season. And as you said, what are you doing it for a second round exit? I don't know. Maybe there's an argument to be made that the deeper you go into the playoffs, the more attractive you become as a destination. And
for sure. And if we're talking if it costs you one of the centers and a second to upgrade that spot, then sure. But if you get to the point where teams are asking for an actual prospect or a first round pick, when your future's uncertain, then you're drawing the line there, because I don't think that marginal upgrade is changing your ceiling a ton. And unfortunately, yeah, you would like to address it now because you need some centers to play. You can't keep going like this for 72 games. Getting, what have they gotten? 15 minutes out of the center position the last 2 games?
Yeah.
If we're considering Boucher a 4 instead of a 5, it's pretty untenable. But I don't think I think they got to keep trying Len and Baines and see what sticks. At least for, I wouldn't. I think what I would do is I would come out Thursday and Boucher would start, and I think I'd give Baines a shot off the bench and see if he can get something going in the bench units and see what's there, because you can't ice these guys forever. There's 62 games left.
And man, I got to give Nick Nurse a lot of credit on, and I've said this a couple times wherever I had the opportunity, is that he really is trying pretty much everything. He's trying guys, other than Matt Thomas, he is pretty much trying everybody. And today we saw Davis, Powell, Stanley Johnson had some good stretches there. So we are getting production from a lot of the guys we weren't getting production from early on in the season, which all builds on the positive momentum. So again, I'm one of the most negative people there is, but even I'm seeing the light here that we do have a half decent team. There's a question for you there. Should we try to trade for Marvin Bagley the third?
Yes, I'm going to continue my recent offseason trend of every year my favorite target for the Raptors is just going to be a guy from a really bad development situation. Like this past year was like, oh, let's get Harry Giles. Before that, it was Chris Dunn. It's just, I'm going to try to poach good guys who've been in bad development situations. I don't know that Bagley will hit the trade market. Like it's the Kings, so you never know what they're actually going to do. I have to say for our guy, Samson Folk, if you engage the Kings in trade talks, it's mandatory that you get Rashawn Holmes back. Samson is in love with Holmes. So, but yeah, that's the kind of move too, where like, if you're the Raptors, I think you're considering stuff like that because it's, you're looking at distressed assets. And I think, you're trying to kick the tires on guys. And it was one of the reasons, I justified the Baines and Len signings from, look, for the dollars you're paying and the fact that you missed out on Ibaka Gasol, like Like these are fine. They'll be, if they're your number 2 and 3 centers, you're in okay shape. My issue though was that like they weren't really upside swings, and they didn't take any upside swings in free agency really, where like, Harry Giles, what he played tonight, he played 5 minutes because Nurkic went out. It's not like he's going gangbusters around the league, but I would have preferred someone with a little more upside on a flyer on one of those spots. So, if you want to look at a guy like Bagley or, Collins is probably the best example of it, of a guy who his long-term fit with his franchise seems tenuous. I'd be trying to be predatory with any of those guys. Now, I don't really like Marvin Bagley's game and what he's shown so far, but it's also the Kings. Like almost nobody looks good there.
Yeah. Man, I gotta respond to Captain Save a Bro. Like the Matt Thomas calling for him to play. I don't care, man. Like we're getting production, we're shooting the ball well, we're getting decent defense from our wings for the most part. I don't know if Thomas is bringing something that the other guys that we saw play tonight aren't bringing. It's not like we suck from the 3-point shot that we need desperate 3-point shooting that Matt Thomas brings. So I don't know. I don't know if we're losing that much by not playing him.
I think it's just weird for people because, Thomas only got such a small sample this year. And he was like, by the end of last year, he had gotten serviceable on defense. Like he's good if they go zone. He at least tries hard. And I think because Davis and Powell are so mistake prone on defense, like those guys have, probably a higher defensive ceiling, but those guys make mistakes. Like especially Norm lately is just like, he's having a really tough time defensively, and Davis fouls a 3-point shooter every game, it seems like. So I think the question's been more like, over the last little bit, we've seen the 4 guys who played tonight, and Watanabe and Len and Flynn all get shots, but Thomas hasn't gotten that shot yet again. I guess Bembry hasn't really either.
Yeah, Bembry.
So on the one hand, it does feel like they're trying a lot of things, but like Thomas has been shelved effectively for 8 games now. Bembry's never really gotten a chance. Like, the other thing too is like this team doesn't practice, so I don't know where. Like they work out and they get their shots up and stuff, but because they had this condensed schedule on the road, they haven't had an actual practice in a while. So I don't even know. Like to answer his question literally, there probably hasn't been 5-on-5 defense in practice for Matt Thomas to look bad or good in a while.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it comes from. Is like I have been, all the other stuff aside, which is its own problem. That I'm not very cool with. Like I don't think Terrence Davis has played very well. Yeah. And I think Norm hasn't played very well either, to where if someone else broke through, I'd be saying, you can cut Norm's minutes down from 20, but they can't do that right now because there just aren't enough guys that they trust.
Yeah, so man, some names being thrown around here, man. I mean, by the way, I don't follow social media much, but for some reason I have Hassan Whiteside on Snapchat, and man, that dude will not enjoy Toronto at all. That guy likes the sun, and he likes to hang out outside. He's not coming to Toronto.
This would be the year for it then, though, right?
Oh yeah. I guess he's in Tampa, yeah.
But I think it's a bad sign if you fall out of the Kings rotation.
Yeah, and Kenneth Fareed, what a blast from the past!
Whoever said that is just trolling me. I don't think that's a legitimate question.
Okay, so some guys like trade Lowry. I mean, so Lowry has a tendency to get off sort of scot-free on some of his poor play, and deservedly so. He's the face of the franchise, blah blah blah, all that. But man, some of his decision making today was very suspect. Couple of turnovers there, a couple of key, which led to points directly. Do we make anything of that, or do we? Is this just the Lowry we're sort of expected to see, and he gets a pass for shooting 3 for 12 and 5 for 17 on any given night, and committing a bunch of turnovers that may arguably have cost us the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole cost us the game thing, like, you could go down any number of things,
it's a
right?
Like, game. It's a
exactly. Take your pick of the play that cost them the game.
Yeah.
I don't think Lowry. It's been weird, right? Because he didn't play very well on Sunday either, and then he went off in the fourth quarter, and was the only reason, or the primary reason, that was still a game late. And then tonight he was the huge driving force in them getting that big lead in the first place. And then whether he ran out of gas or was just not having a great night or whatever. Now Sunday he put a lot of the blame on himself for that foul. And I'm sure he would do the same tonight. He's usually a guy that's pretty hard on it, pretty self-deprecating after a poor performance. So I didn't think this was outside of the first quarter, I certainly didn't think this, he played 2 unbelievable quarters the last 2 games and then 6 ho-hum quarters. I don't know. He's almost 35. He might have some off nights now.
Yeah, and let me pick up. And there's a question for what do you think of letting Flynn play more and trading Lowry? I'll skip that second part, but Flynn play more. And also, like, one of the stated things that the Raptors did at the start of the season was like they're going to manage Lowry. Finally, they're going to manage Lowry's minutes. Like every year we hear about this, and every year he plays 36. So last year he played about 36 and a half minutes. This year he's playing more. Like he's playing more. After saying we're going to cut back, they're increasing it. When you do have guys like Flynn, they're kind of waiting for those minutes. And if this early part of the season, they always say 1/3 of the season to figure out who you are. Maybe this is the time to figure it out and scale back Lowry's minutes more, even if it comes at the expense of wins, because we have guys who have shown enough that they may be able to take over the point guard spot given the opportunity. Are you in favor of like getting Lowry down to maybe like, dare I say, 28-30, maybe around that, and scaling up some of the younger guys?
I mean, I think 32 is probably your realistic number. Yeah. Like the way games go, if it's a tight game, they're going to want Lowry on the floor a lot. And I would put Van Vliet in there too. Like obviously he's a lot younger, but he plays a physical style and carries a huge load defensively. I wouldn't mind his minutes coming down. And when I mocked out the rotation before the year, I had Flynn at, I think, 10 a game, which I think is, rookie struggle, and rookie point guards in particular. I think 10 a game for a guy who went late in the first, even a guy who was a top 10 player in college basketball last year, I think that's a reasonable starting point and a reasonable thing to build from it. And, if you're looking at, and so say Lowry gets down to 32, so there's 16 minutes a game where Lowry's not on the floor. Well, you make sure that Flynn and Van Vliet are out there, and Van Vliet that way can still work off the ball a little bit because he is, a more natural, I think, scoring, like an undersized shooting guard almost, more than he is a natural lead point guard, even though those skills look to be coming along. So that's what I would be doing for sure. I would like Flynn to be soaking up some of those non-Lowry minutes. And again, some of that is he's your longest term investment here, but also like the other options haven't been that good. And if you're going to struggle and you're going to cycle through guys, I would lean toward the guy who has the highest upside and the guy who you have the longest term investment in. So it's also really early though, right? Like it's 10 games and Flynn's played a couple times, and I've been a little disappointed that he hasn't seen more consistent time, because I think too the other thing with rookies is like, especially a point guard, you gotta get the chance to correct those mistakes, right? If you get 2 games worth of film on yourself and then you don't get to play for another couple weeks, it's probably gonna be tough. So I would like to see him a little bit more for sure, and I would like that to come. You trim Lowry and Van Vliet's minutes. You could have him take Terrence Davis' spot in the rotation right now. There's a number of ways he can do it, and I hope he's back in there sooner than later, because I thought he's looked good when he got a chance. Good's he's looked solid. He's looked like a rookie a little bit, but if you came in with the right expectations, he's probably met them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think people are just proposing trades left and right for Lowry. I mean, but their general point is correct. I mean, it's not like they're insane. I mean, we are definitely imbalanced in terms of bigs versus guards. And
the big thing I would say with the Lowry trade is like yes, you could technically do it at any time. Lowry's eligible to be traded now, but if you're trying to maximize the market for it, and especially the fact that you're going to have to match salary, which I know everyone gets annoyed hearing, but it's just like, it's a fact. You have to get the salaries to line up. It's probably, if they did that, it would probably be a move in like late February up until the deadline, when a bunch more guys can be traded so their salaries can be thrown in and stuff. So I understand why people are thinking that way. I think, Masai probably wants another 10 games of this before he makes that decision anyway, but just like practically you got to wait another month or so here before you really start digging into that.
Oh, what the hell? Sean Mehta, OG has no IQ actually. So many times he doesn't know what to do when he tries to dribble. No, man, I firmly disagree with that one. I think he's gotten much better as he drives the ball into the rim. He takes his time a little bit more. And
look at some of the passing he's making once he gets inside. And you can't be an all defense level defender without reading the game well. Now, I think that's more of just like, I think we as kind of like a basketball community should stop using IQ as a stand-in for a lot of like when things aren't clicking. I'm not saying this to criticize that one person. I'm sure that they meant what they said, but
basketball IQ, yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes that gets thrown in as a stand-in. And sometimes there's some coded language elements there with the two. And again, I'm not saying that this person meant that, but you see it a lot in like draft scouting where, it's not often you see like a white player get the low IQ tag or something like that. It's so. But I also don't think I don't think for his low usage role and the way he passes the ball, I just don't think that that's true. I think he doesn't have a lot of experience with the ball in his hands, and that shows sometimes. Not everyone's going to develop at the rate Siakam did.
Let's end off our test post-game
pilot episode.
Pilot, yes, right.
Do we even have a name for it yet, by the way?
Man, I suck at coming up with names, dude.
Yeah.
Pardon the corruption. Come on.
Yeah, we gotta get a host. We gotta get a name.
Yeah, there's a lot to do.
At least people are actually watching it. That's kind of surprising. Because we didn't push it anywhere, right?
We didn't push it anywhere. No, I just posted it here. I accidentally published the stream earlier because I didn't know how the studio part worked. So here we are. Right. But the guy that I am just absolutely enjoying, I track him on the court, is Chris Boucher. And the play that stands out for me tonight was there was one play where he, I think it was McCollum or somebody who drove, and he came over to contest the drive, and he's always like this, straight. Mm-hmm. Like he's not like this, always straight in his defense, which is a great thing because you don't get so many fouls called against him, given how much he contests the shots. Like he should be fouling out after like 10 minutes, but he stays on the court, so he knows how to do that. In this play, he contests the drive, and then he
did foul out yesterday, just to be clear.
But what I'm saying, if you compare to how much he contests incoming drives and shots, right? Yeah. And for a guy with limited experience, like he stays on the court. So in this play, he covers the drive and then goes back to the perimeter and blocks a shot. Like he knows where to be and what to do and how to react on the court. And his 3-point shot is just flying right now. Like he is. And I was watching the Portland feed in this game, and they put it best. By the way, Portland's announcers, I don't know who they are. Lovely commentary team.
Yeah, I think it's Calabro on the call now.
Just fantastic. Like one of the best. And they said, well, the Raptors with this guy, he gives up no liabilities. He is not a liability on any part of the floor, and they can play him, which was a shock to them because with a guy with that limited playing time, limited playing experience, you expect him to have certain holes in his game which make him unplayable in certain situations. With Boucher, that's not even been the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's his third year in the system, right? Yeah. So he's got some experience. He turned 28 today. So as much as he's inexperienced, I think, there's that maturity that you need to have come around is hopefully coming there. I think it's good. Yeah. And I think, what you said about the way he controls his body defensively has been a huge part of his offensive outburst too, where the threes are what stand out, and that's going to probably determine his ceiling ultimately and whether he can play the four. But the thing that I've been most impressed by is this is a guy who's 6'10", 6'11", and 200 pounds, maybe 205, depending on what he's saying that day about how much weight he gained. And his ability to control his body and protect the ball, he's got to lead the team in and ones, I think. And for a guy that slender, you would think that maybe strength is an issue. And if you draw contact, that's it. And I think he's done the way that he protects the ball and, kind of invites the contact through the chest to still get the shot off. It's the same kind of skill set. It's the same body control and spatial awareness that you need to protect the rim, but still maintain a position where you can close out, like you were saying. So I think that's the thing that stood out to me the most. The three ball, I want to see some more sample because he's always been talked about as a guy with the three, and he just straight up has never shot the three well. Mm-hmm. Even though people want him to be that, he shot 32% over the last couple of years in the G League, and that's not enough, but it looks good and it's dropping. So obviously Boucher's been the bright spot for the Raptors so far, and I think there might be some inconsistencies to come as matchups change or teams prepare for him or whatever, but this is a guy, man. It's
And a couple of
Happy
comments
birthday,
here
Chris Boucher.
as we close off. Like some people, criticizing Siakam of not finishing the game well and starting strong, finishing poorly. For sure, man. I mean, no arguments there. I mean, he did miss 2 game-winning shots at the end of the day. But and we discussed this earlier in the show, so there's no point repeating it. But I do feel his progression since the start of the season is significant. So I'm looking at that more than a few plays here and there. I don't think pressure is a thing for him right now. And what else is there? Let me just scan these things before we sign off. Sorry, guys. First time we're doing this, so I don't know. I think that's it, man.
All right.
There's a bunch of comments. Oh, we must go. So if Siakam becomes who we need him to be, he must go through adversities. That's true, and that's a good point, man. Because if you look at our historic number 1 options, you look at let's go back like Damon, Vince. T-Mac, maybe not T-Mac because he was number 2 at the time, Chris Bosh, even Andrea Bargnani, DeMar DeRozan, they all got time to develop. Like we didn't, like they got a few years where they were the pseudo number 1-ish option before we started judging them. So I feel like with Siakam, this really is maybe the second year or first year, arguably, that he is the main guy on the team. And to say things like he chokes in the fourth and these kind of things, it may be true. It may entirely be true, but I do think it's a little premature.
Yeah, I mean, he had most of last year in that role, but it wasn't until maybe the midway point that teams really started preparing for him and adjusting for that. I do think that Celtics series and the bubble in general was that's the trial by fire, right? Like that is this is the year you kind of want to see him start applying those lessons. And I think that we're seeing that a little bit. Like the first couple games were discouraging, but I think his last 3 or 4 have been nice steps forward. And there's going to be, it's really hard to be the top scorer on an NBA team against good defenses. And it's not going to be a smooth path that just goes in one direction the whole way. It's going to be, it's going to have some ups and downs, and he's figuring it out right now. And then, defenses might recognize the way he's making plays and take that away, and then he's going to have to do something else. And that's kind of his challenge for this year. And I don't think, I know that people get impatient with it, but like it's a 4-year contract and we're 10 games into it. Like there's some time for him to work through this stuff, at least this year anyway. Like, yeah, next year you want to know who he is because you got to build around that and build with that. But I think there's still some time here.
Yeah. Well, I think it is past 1 a.m. Blake, thanks for coming on, man. If you don't already, obviously follow Blake. Nobody better when it comes to basketball. There is the G League draft that happened. Maybe we'll talk about that at some other time.
Yeah, I mean, or have Kelsey on to talk about it, maybe, or Andrew Damlin.
Right. Right. Yeah. And hey, you got to make a yes or no answer to this question. Nothing more. Okay, we'll end off with this. Do you think we still make the playoffs? Asks Meet Patel.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, man.
It's like 3 games out.
I know. I'm just.
It's a lot of season.
I just needed a question to end it off with, man. My first time doing this and all that. All right, Blake. Thank you, viewers or commenters. Thank you. We'll try to do this more frequently and maybe after every game. So thanks for tuning in. How do I end this stream? All right, Blake.
All right, see you, man.
See you, man.